People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.
October Red is sponsored by SA Security. Maximum security, minimum fuss.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. I'm Abs of October Red, and I'm joined by the amazing Teo. This is a different twist to what we usually do, but Teo, being like myself from a mixed race background, I wanted to give Teo and people like us an opportunity to talk about their experiences. Because believe it or not, just because we all look the same, just because we're all mixed, doesn't mean that we have the exact same experience. Teo being the first guest, I'm absolutely honored that he's here, privileged that he actually said yes, and he's named it. He's given it the name. He's gone with mixed emotions. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mixed Emotions. Teo, good morning.
Good morning, October Red. That was a hell of an intro. Thank you.
Listen, you deserve it.
Yeah. Well, I chose, you had a few different titles, and I liked mixed emotions because I feel like this is about emotions and relationships, and as in race is about relationships in a way. And so, yeah.
It definitely is.
Appreciate you inviting me on.
Listen, you're starting a trend. We're going to carry this on. We've discussed like what we can do in the future with this, but today it's all about you. Teo, like me, I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to know how it all started, the journey of Teo to where he ended up now, and obviously that trail, that audit trail of different experiences, different emotions that you've had along your journey. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how Teo started.
Okay. It's a big question. And so I will, within the topic of what we're talking about, so I'll just give a quick timeline. So I was born in 1990 in Dorset, in a town called Bournemouth, which is pretty multiracial, but I was raised in a small town called New Milton, which is about 8 miles outside of that. It's an all-white town in the 90s. And so yeah, I was raised there with my English mother, and I had a Nigerian father, and he was abusive and then not in my life. And so I grew up with my mum. Her mum was important to her as a support. My step granddad, who was my nan's partner, who was Welsh. And then my granddad, who was kind of there in the background, and some other people. And then my mum had different partners. And at 14, we chose a white partner, a man who did not want to be my stepdad. And so, yeah, those are like some of the formative experiences I had. I went to secondary school in Bournemouth, but I went to primary school in a small town called Lymington, which is also all white in the 90s. And so, yeah, I was the only Black person I knew and had close contact with. I have a half sibling who grew up with a large extended family, Caribbean family in Bath, and now it's in Bristol. And now I moved when I was 18 to London, and then that's where I've lived ever since. So that's sort of my racial background and where I've been and what the context was. So yeah, I'm an only child and the only Black person I knew.
That's it in a nutshell. I want to go back to your childhood then, Teo. Obviously, when did Dad leave the picture? And then I want to focus just a little bit back on yourself. When was Dad just not there? That you were aware that it's just like Dad's gone?
My parents weren't married. They didn't live together. My dad was older. My mum was 24 when she had me. I got because I don't know, because I don't remember. It was around 2 that he wasn't around. And then I had a visit with a social worker when I was about 11. I think I had some unsupervised weekends or some supervised time. I don't remember any of it. And then yeah, there was a family court ruling, and then he was not permitted access anymore. So yeah, I guess around 2, and then one visit I remember when I was 11 with a social worker.
So growing up in the small town then, like you said, dad was more or less out of the picture straight away. And I will come into why you don't remember certain things because it's how we cope. We kind of
Yes.
cope with stress by just our brain literally just locks it in a cupboard and unless it's poked, we forget about it. But when did you first realize that you were different? Obviously, you're growing up with everybody around you. They've got paler skin, they're white. And did you even notice that?
No, no, I think that yeah, race is definitely racial difference, and what the consequences of racial difference are. They have to be taught. Obviously, they're not something you just wake up and notice. But they're taught in ways that are not explicit. So no one sits you down, or at least no one sat me down to explain why I was different and what that meant and the history of that and what the implications would be. It just materializes through just the process of being socialized. So it's all around. It's in cartoons and TV shows, it's in books, it's in the way, and it's in lots of intangible ways that are difficult to pin down. Just the way people respond to you in a space, how they feel about you, their emotions will kind of be apparent, especially to a child, because children have this like very unfiltered way of apprehending absolutely everything because they don't have any prejudice about what they're looking at. They don't particularly have any beliefs. They look to their caregivers to interpret for them. What does this mean? Is this safe? Am I okay? Where are we going? All those kind of things. Like they need an adult to interpret it. So I don't have a memory of learning that I was Black and what that meant, but I did learn it, and I learned in a very simple childlike way, which is I am Black and Black is bad. When I'm close, when I'm around, then it can change how people respond to my mum, for example. And I guess the first like incident I could remember would be when I was pretty old, maybe like 9, and that was at my primary school. And another kid had called me a brownie or something like that. Pretty mild racial insult. It was racial, but I didn't realize it was. I just thought, well, I have brown skin, and she's calling me brownie, and I called her something else that was about the way she looked, and then I forgot about it. I thought, oh, I don't like that girl. And that's it. It's just a playground thing. But then later in the day, she came into my class as an older girl, and she came up to me, and she looked really like upset and red-faced, and had to be like, I am sorry for what I said to you. She's obviously been pulled aside by a teacher and told that that was really bad and not acceptable, and to go and apologize to me. So she had. And I remember thinking, oh, why was it such a big deal? I don't understand. What did she say to me then? I thought it was just normal. But then I realized that there was something that she was able to say to me that I wasn't able to say back, or some kind of something that she had over me that I wasn't sure what it was. But she knew what it was, but I didn't. And the adults around knew what it was, but they didn't. No one told me what it was. So, but then I did piece it together.
Did you ever go home and speak to your mum about it and say, "Mom, somebody's called me out for looking different," or that kind of relationship you would have had with your mum, or was race something that was swept under the carpet? It just wasn't discussed. You're a human being and we're all equal and everyone lives happily ever after.
That would have been something by that age I wouldn't have thought to my mum for various reasons. Like some of these are to do with race, and some of these are to do with family dysfunction and intergenerational trauma and lots of other things, and just not knowing how to raise a kid. 24 is quite young to be raising a child by yourself, and my mum had her own things going on that obviously I wasn't aware of. But I was aware that it wasn't really something that was like it couldn't be talked about. I think I'd said when I was about 4 that you wish. I think I said, I remember being in the back of the car and where we were driving to, and I said, you wish I had blonde hair and blue eyes like you, or you wish I looked like you. And she said, no, I don't. But that was it. She couldn't really go much further into that. I just knew, oh, okay, she's not going to talk about whatever this is with me. So I suppose I just did not refer to it again, really. I did, over the years, some things would come up and I would bring them up. Around when I remember a very difficult conversation when I was 14. By that time, my mum had this man that she's still with, and I was 14. I said, I wish you'd brought me up in like Southampton or like a neighbouring city where there would just be other people like me. I really wish that you'd done that. And they were not having it. And yeah, I guess the responses were like, well, I'm not perfect. And then her boyfriend said, oh, it's called me ungrateful. So it was really not possible to have a conversation about race beyond what was comfortable for the white people in my life to talk about, which is really limited and mostly prioritize what they were comfortable with and what felt nice for them, which, as we know, is pretty limited because whiteness is a system which benefits it. Well, it doesn't really benefit, but people feel like it benefits them, and it has this ease to it and this comfort of, well, I'm in the dominant group and I don't have to be inconvenienced for a black person ever. But anyway, there's no reason that could compel me to look inwards and adjust on behalf of the comfort of a black person. I never have to do that. That is part of the setup. So even having a child that is, you're bonded to as a parent, it doesn't trump that comfort, the priority of your racial comfort in most instances, I would say.
When you're sitting in that car, Teo, what was it that invoked that comment for you to say, you wish I had blonde hair and blue eyes? Do you remember what was the trigger?
No, I think it was probably just me observing different things and just sort of, how like kids pipe up with things they've been thinking about out of nowhere. Kids can kind of just be like, I have a thought, or I'm going to share some information. Like kids will often tell teachers like personal information that's like their parents would probably prefer they didn't say, and things like that. It's kind of, I think I was just reflecting. I think kids reflect and they show what is shown to them. They don't necessarily listen and do what they're told, but they do what they're shown and they say what they see.
And that I do agree with. I mean, I just want to let you know that you are important, that your skin, however dark it is beautiful, and you are valued. And I am sorry, and it is sad to hear that, because I can reflect to similar ages, and I didn't have that. I was always brought up and it was all black. There was no white side. It was my father that left. He didn't want anything to do with me. They were married, and the irony with him is that he said he didn't want to have he shouldn't have went with a nigger in the first place. Now he was talking about his wife, my mother. So I had the different perspective. So he wasn't in my life. I think he left when I was about 1 year old, and I was always brought up to believe, well, I'm just black. It just wasn't a thing. So the contrast with you, where you're sitting there in that car when you're 4 years old, you're innocent, because you are. You developing your personality at that age. All of this information that you get fed up to when you're 4 years old is crucial for your development. And one of the things that you saying is, you wish I looked like somebody else. You wish I don't look like me. You're not happy with me. And that is extremely sad at 4 years old that you notice that, Teo.
I think I definitely felt that. Well, first of all, I'm really sorry that that's how your dad spoke about your mum, because
It's all right. You can burn in hell.
It's abuse in itself to know that that's what your father said to your mother, because just because it's not said to you, it's still the same thing, because that person, that woman made you, and that's how he spoke to her. So I'm really sorry about that. I also think that it's kind of like, that is kind of what I'm talking about with the beliefs that go with being socialized into whiteness, or believing that I'm in this group called white people, and it means something like superior about me, that I get to be comfortable and that I never have to inconvenience or change myself on behalf of someone who's in this black group. Those are below me. And even if someone It's like, well, I'm a nice person, or I don't really think that, or I have had this black child and they're my only child and I love them more than anything, or I'm attracted to this black person. I've had children with a black person. I've married this black person. They haven't ever looked at those horrible beliefs because they're so ugly that no one wants to look at them. And they don't want to let them go because they kind of feel people usually willingly don't let go of power. So even if they kind of hold both things, they're like, well, I like this person or I care about this person, but I want to hold on to my comfort as well and my power. I don't want to just give that up because that would feel bad. So, and it comes out at high pressure points, like this relationship isn't working, or we're in an argument, or I'm starting to have social penalties for being associated with you that I don't want to have. So I would like you to align with me, but I do not want to align and lose that social standing I have by associating with you. And I think probably a 24-year-old woman who's just got out of an abusive relationship and has quite a dysfunctional family herself, although they were there for her, my nan was there for her, doesn't have the wherewithal to, or chooses not to have the wherewithal, a bit of both, to really look at how racism is and how ubiquitous it is and how it's something that their child is not going to be able to escape, and that they can either pull the mask off and look at how ugly racism is and how that they are carrying these beliefs, and to get rid of them and change their whole life around and reorientate their perspective and lifestyle, or they can tell themselves a story about how, well, it's not that bad, and then if their kid ever brings something up, to say, well, that's just ignorance, and really not get into it and have preserved their comfort and the support system that they have, which contains racist people. Like quite a few people in my family and my mum's friendship group had quite strongly racist beliefs, like would vote BNP or share that stuff on Facebook, or my great uncle is a horrible man in lots of different ways, but specifically really doesn't like black people, but then would say, oh, not you. And I think this is quite a common thing for
in the workplace. I've faced that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're all right.
You're all right. Exactly. And so, yeah, that's quite a familiar. If you're a child, you can't really leave. It's like, I think sometimes people say, like, why didn't you leave? Which is what people say to people in abusive relationships as well. Or in lots of circumstances, people will say, why didn't you leave? And it's like, because of lots of very good reasons, like didn't have resources, didn't have any support network outside of this network where I'm facing this horrible treatment, feel indebted, and have all this conditioning about how I'm the problem and I'm oversensitive, and if only I can get on with, I'm really difficult. And something people used to say to me quite frequently, who sometimes didn't even know me that well, but they'd be like, you're so lucky to have your mum. And I would be like, I don't know what that means, because it's just my mum. What do you mean I'm lucky? But I suppose what they were saying is, that must be hard having you, and you're lucky she, like, I don't know what they
like lucky she tolerates you.
It's something like that. I don't know what they meant. But yeah, anyway, there are many reasons people don't leave that situation and why they are used to it. When I've made this TikTok, which is how we connected, non-binary being, like it's I can't remember what I was going to say now. It's just, there are lots of reasons people don't leave, psychological reasons as well as material reasons. Like,
and she's your mom.
Yeah, that's the thing that is quite hard.
It's tough.
And it can be a lot more clear cut if you don't have this kind of really like primal need to connect with someone who is bringing you into this harmful situation and keeping you there because they want you to stay there because it's comfortable for them. That's a lot harder to pull away from than when you meet someone in the course of things, like someone you thought was a friend or some people you're working with, and you're like, they're racist, but I'm psychologically separate from them.
Yeah, you can compartmentalize them. Yeah.
Fuck them. It's a lot harder to be like, oh, I never want to see, like, I don't deal with my nan. Like, that doesn't feel nice to say. Like, that's someone who my earliest memories are warmth and affection and closeness, and I don't have any others, so I can't just replace those with something else. As an adult, even though I have, like, I've got, like, moved to London, found those things, done therapy, done like loads of things to heal as an adult, and I feel quite healed and happy as an adult. And often I can see that the fault and the lacking was not in me being mixed or black, but in what people think that means and how they project that onto children.
And that is important, what you've said there. It's not about you, but it's what people project on you based on their cognitive dissonance, their core values, but you end up being, I don't know. I almost say it's like zoo-like, because you become a focus, but an unwanted one, because you're just trying to. You're a child. You're growing up. You're going to school. You're meeting friends, meeting people, learning. But then you've got this shadow that's following you everywhere because of how other people think, and even from speaking to you, Teo, the pressure that you must have undergone as a child must have been horrific, because no child should have to worry about what color their skin is when they're trying to learn their 2 times tables and learn how to tie a shoelace, or have those bonding, going out to the cinema, wherever, doing stuff with your family. That shouldn't be a part of that.
I think it's quite hard to tell what's missing sometimes, but then when you're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, there's always a barrier, because I would be friends with people for years, and then out of nowhere they'd say something extremely racist, like they would use the N-word out of nowhere to describe some chocolate or something, or I was friends with someone for years, and then we ended up having an argument in the library, I remember, because she was going to become a doctor. She is a doctor, and she's from a family of doctors, and she believes, and maybe still believes, but she believed that she was saying black men are biologically more violent than white men. And we were going back and forth about this. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And she believed it. And I find that quite like
Horrifying.
Yeah, that she's out there treating people. But I think people know that anyway, that a lot of these people who have become doctors do have racist beliefs, but can confirm they do. But yeah, things missing, like there's always a barrier basically. So it doesn't matter how long I would know someone or how deeply they would say they cared about me, at some point a dehumanizing belief would pop up that they would tell me about, and it would be like a stomach drop moment, or just this kind of like, I would say, like, I would feel huge shame, even though it's not mine to feel shame, but obviously as a young person I feel like the shame is mine. So yeah, and there were lots of things, like I became very aware of beliefs adults would have about me, and then I would have this quite self-surveilling, self-censoring thing that perhaps maybe people who've been in cults would understand, of like you're policing your own thoughts and behaviors. And I would end up with this kind of compulsive, like, performing innocence at all times. I would be very aware, like if I was left alone in a room in a home where we were visiting, I would like say aloud, if I was touching something, like, I'm just going to put that there, because I thought that I just felt like watched, and that at any moment I could be accused of stealing, of doing something that fed into some racial fantasy people had of me. So I became very conscious of how I ate and what I ate. Once I was eating an orange on the school field, and this girl said to me, "Oh, you look like a little monkey when you eat." And she was not trying to hurt my feelings. She was saying what she was thinking. So I became really aware of like how the white people are very nice. So I faced very little like overt on my account. I'm sharing stories from people who grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and that is very different. That would be verbal abuse every day, racial abuse every day. This would be more like an uncanny feeling of niceness most of the time, with the occasional communication that the way that you're being perceived is as something subhuman, not quite as human.
There's an undertone.
Yeah, so it was kind of like it's like, there's a psychologist called Dr. Joy DeGruy.
Yes, got a book.
Yeah. You have? Yeah, okay.
I've got her book, yeah.
She has a phrase of poisoning the cookies. So
yeah,
She's talking about something else, but I would relate this to my experience of like, I'm having nice things, so maybe I would get praise, or maybe I would get affection, or maybe even like some special treatment. But that is because there's a poisonous belief they have that they're a nice person, but they view blackness as a disability, or a like like a blight, like, oh, you have this blackness, and I'm being nice to you, or you're welcome in this house. Things like it feels very,
Overcompensating.
yes. Well, because in fact they do have a racist belief. They just approach the racist belief in a different way than someone who's like, you're black and I hate that and I hate you. That's different. That person is actually more congruent with what they believe. They believe that black people are less than human, and they communicate that, and they do not like black people. Someone who, there's a way that it's used in a nice context to almost feed that person's ego, and you become a prop or an object in that person's view of themselves as a do-gooder, or a good person. I'm a nice person because I'm even being nice to you. So and that, it's like a creepy feeling, actually. When I watched Get Out, I got a lot of identification with the sunken place and Logan King, and where the character he's in the Panama hat and the
he runs.
And he's like, what happened to you? And he's like, I'm happy, I'm great. That is kind of what those people want. That's what you're being folded into, I think, sometimes. Or at least my experience of being raised in a totally white environment. It is affection, but it's like it's like kind of, they kind of want to have you.
I know what you mean.
A doll in there. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
But yeah, self-surveilling and being really aware of what I said, and I ended up kind of honing lots of defensive mechanisms throughout secondary school: humor, sarcasm, reading people, and saying something that was true about them that was not apparent, maybe, and that would hurt their feelings and would stay with them. So they would leave me alone and they would not try that again. Or being very high achieving. I was quite unhappy at home, but I did very well at school. And I was well behaved and conscientious, and I would get on with everyone. No one had a problem with me, and most people would say they liked me, but I wasn't close to anyone. I wasn't close to my mom, or I wasn't close to my family. I had friends, but I wasn't actually close to them. They were the group I would hang out with, and I was very funny in that group. So yeah, I didn't face too much explicit aggression or bullying. And I would actually be more like silent if people were being bullied. So I was complicit in that bullying, and I feel bad about that. And I wanted to keep myself just contained and never become a focus or anything.
Self-preservation.
Yeah.
Not because you didn't want to be the target, because you didn't want to be somebody that was picked on, because you had enough going on at home.
Yeah.
How difficult was it compartmentalizing different emotions? Because like I said, you're trying to just focus. It seems as if you've got this drive in you because you pushed a lot into your education. So academically, that's where you could focus because it is what it is. It's learning. There's no necessary bias in learning. You can just do it and get on with it. So that sits fine in its lane on its own. But even though you've got that drive and it shows determination and strength on your part, how did you compartmentalize the stuff that you was going on with, the subtleties, dealing with racist great uncle, carrying that baggage around with you, and then still trying to find out who am I, who's Teo, what am I? But all of this going on at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how I compartmentalize, because I guess your brain just does it for you. In terms of like leaning into education, that was because my mum was and is a primary school teacher, and I think was very focused on appearing respectable. So she had like these contradictions where she obviously wanted to rebel and be with a black man from a far away country, and that was so much more interesting than her like small life in this small town, like generations back. All our family lived there. So yeah, she'd done that, but then she would have this like wanting to be respected and keep her head down. So it was really drilled into me about outward appearance, and outward appearance was so much more important than anything that was happening at home or within you. Probably herself as well, but from my own perspective, within me, all that mattered was clearing hurdles and getting to university. That was kind of I suppose, like, what she was thinking was the best thing for you to do would be to get out and get a good education, and that would look good for me because I'm a single mum with a black child, and people think things about me that I don't like, and you can disprove them wrong by doing really well. So that was really something that was drilled into me. And so I guess the compartmentalization was just what was modeled, because that was what she was doing. And I'm from a family that it can be quite warm and has a good sense of humor, lots of laughter and making fun of each other and good times and creativity, but with limits. So not too much introspection, and importantly, not too much change, not too much changing of patterns, but trying, I guess, generation to generation. In terms of dealing with like race day to day, I don't know. I think I remember, because I feel like sometimes these memories become quite hazy because it's not something that I or anyone likes to do, to revisit a time where you felt completely caught in double binds and powerless to change the situation, and I've just got to get through this because 8 a.m. I've got to get up, have breakfast, put my uniform on, and go to school. I've got to go and get on the bus, deal with that, and I've got to go to school. I've got to be there the whole day and all these different lessons. Not all the points. There's all sorts of shit that's happening in all schools. Like they are, there's loads of horrible things happening in schools. Like teachers are sometimes creepy, and there's loads of bullying that happens, and kids are having all sorts of different problems that they're managing by themselves and trying to negotiate like where they fit in socially. And so I thought I felt pretty much just like I was in that. I had friends who were misfits in different ways in secondary school, like who were gay, or the one who was a doctor was like, she felt like a misfit for different reasons, and she was the only girl in of her sibling group, and was being treated completely differently and neglected because of that.
Yeah.
In the context of her family, she was obviously like quite well off and became a doctor, but within her context, she very much knew that she was second, and that to her brothers, and so I don't know. Everyone had their different things they were dealing with, and mine was kind of mixed in with that. I think a lot of it felt physical, to do with my physical appearance and feeling and comparison. So feeling that my hair wasn't right, and I just strong feelings of wishing to have different physical features, not because I didn't like them, but because the others are just wanting to be the same as everyone, and feeling like these ones were ugly, because that is how white kids talk about African features. They don't like, it's considered ugly. And I think my mom tried a little bit to say, she would sometimes say, like, as I was getting older, she'd be like, no, if your nose does get, like, your nose is lovely, and if it got broader, that would be lovely. Like, that's a good thing as well. She was trying to say something like that, but I just remember just being like, okay. Because I already knew at that point that I was like, my view of everyone was, you're not someone I would go to for reassurance or affirmation about this. I feel like I have so much more understanding of this than you, and other things than you, and I don't trust you to make good decisions for who's safe to let in this house. I don't trust you with good decisions about lots of things, and I see what you're trying to do. Okay, I guess you want me to be like, oh, thanks, so I'll just do that. So I guess it's more just a loneliness of feeling like no one really has no one has an overview on this for me. No one, no one has the ability to make me feel any more, any better about who and what I am than I do. So I would
Yeah.
just sort of work with that. Um, my mum did do my hair, and she did it quite nicely when I was growing up. So she would braid it, and sometimes that could be quite a nice bonding experience. But sometimes she would be stressed and tired. She was working full time, and that would not feel great. But I was like late, and she was getting annoyed with my hair. I felt like, yeah, it was a conundrum about my hair at the time, like what to do with it, what to do with it.
We see that now.
Huh?
We see that a lot now. You
Yes,
get a
yeah,
lot of white moms on TikTok saying, hey guys, I just want to know, how do you do the hair?
yeah, and I
You
think
know,
that's interesting
it's
as
a big
well.
thing.
I feel like a lot of that is well, for me, it goes in the category of people using their kids for currency on social media to get attention for themselves, and that kind
Yep.
of, for me, goes back to the objectifying of a child, and particularly
Spot
a
on.
mixed-race child, of what can
Spot
I use
on.
them for myself, like to make
That
me
zoo effect, which I was talking
feel.
about earlier.
Yeah, which is how a lot of people will talk about, oh, I really want a mixed race baby or something like that. Like that was quite big in the 90s. And so yeah, there can be all about what does it mean about me, not how am I gonna facilitate the flourishing of this other human being who I've yet to get to know, and who I've had and created with this other person that perhaps I don't know anything about them. My mum didn't really know a lot about my dad when I would ask her. I don't think she was withholding it. I think she really didn't know. I think also
When
because he didn't tell her for his own reasons that he had come from a colonized part of West Africa to from a wealthy family to make it in England, the motherland, and had failed in his own estimation. And I think this is quite common. I've learned since that there's people who do that will save face and not go back because people will be like, "How did it go? What did you achieve?" And they don't have anything to show, so they just stay. And he had two children with. He had a child in Nigeria before he came, and then he had my sister with a woman from, I think my sister's mother is Jamaican, and then had me. So he was not really tied. He had his own issues, obviously. But yeah, I think it's quite a common thing that there may even be some aspirational thing in having a child with an English person, having come from this country and putting the colonial motherland on a pedestal a little bit. But
it's interesting you say that. What did you ever have the conversation? Because obviously there's lots of reasons why we're having this conversation, but one of the things that I've noticed is I speak to a lot of mixed race people um, in general. I can't narrow it down to any particular time, but what I find quite interesting is they'll date somebody outside their own race and they'll not think about the consequences for the child, which seems to be a bit of a theme. It's like, okay, I love you, I want to be with you, all the rest of it, which is genuine. I'm not saying it's not in certain circumstances, but then you have a mixed race child as part of that relationship, whatever it is, but you're not thinking about the consequences for the child. Um, Say, for example, you may have a fetish, a liking, like you said, there's a bit of rebellion. I'm gonna get pregnant for a black guy because it goes against all the, the code that's been stuck into my brain from when I was a child. But then nobody's taken into account, like yourself, how you feel, what you go through, you looking in the mirror and then looking back at your mom and saying, "You didn't really want me, did you? You wanted somebody that looked different. You wanted somebody with blonde hair. You wanted somebody with blue eyes." The fact that you're saying, don't worry, if your nose gets broader. I mean, absurd isn't the word. You surrounding yourself with, like you said, the misfits of the bunch, but the misfits of the bunch have still got the same preconceived ideas. Even one of them that's in a profession which involves looking after people believes that black people are subhuman. So that generational thing that carries on. Did you ever have that conversation with your mom to say, Mum, did you think about the consequences? Did you really think about your decisions, what it was going to be like to procreate with somebody outside your race? Because don't get me wrong, we can have rubbish partners and they're the same race, and it's just diabolical anyway. But at the end of the day, you're going to be seen. It's not something that you can just hide. So, did you ever have that conversation with mom?
Yeah, I mean, the conversation when I was 14 was definitely one of those, but that didn't. Um, I wasn't really in a position to push my point because I lived at home and there they both were, and they were adults, and they sort of said, no, you're wrong. So I did have it. I mean, I'm estranged from my family, so I don't, and I have had a couple of conversations, but they are limited. It's hard to explain. They don't go to where you think they might. If you bring up something like, for example, if you bring up something, if you take it back to like a smaller situation, such as working with someone who's white and they do something microaggressive, and then you're like, hey, I just didn't like that thing, and would you mind like not doing that? Okay, like we all know that that can that's very reasonable. That can just go in the whole. You can end up losing your job or
Correct.
being so that, but with your parental authority figure, you're telling them you raised me wrongly, or you were not you made bad decisions as a parent. That's really hard to tell a parent. Most parents find that it's rare that a parent will be like, okay, I understand. And to her credit, she did do that, but it's just her under it just doesn't go very far. Her willingness to go into it doesn't go very far. It's a paddling pool, you know. It's kind of, yes, I understand what you mean, and you know what that's like for me. It's kind of, and it was at the time actually during BLM. I feel like a lot of people with black people with white families had things come to it because it kind of gave people a flashpoint to talk about without talking so directly about the ins and outs of their own specific relationship. They could talk about this proxy sort of movement and be like, hey, what, look, I see that you're not remotely involved or interested in this movement. Do you ever think about how that affects me? And yeah, it's a very vague thing that I would get back from them, which would be kind of like, I think things are improving, you know, yeah, you know, it's not ideal and things like this. But yeah, just a very vague kind of, some people are ignorant and it's best to ignore them, and just that's really as far as
The shutdown.
Yeah, and I think that um, that's. I'm thinking of several different things. I'm thinking that her brother. I grew up knowing that he had been glassed in the neck at some point, and as I got older, I realized this was the person who had done this to him had done it because he had been being abusive towards my parents when they were together in this social club somewhere in Hampshire or Dorset. That had come to a head, and my uncle had said, you know, leave them alone or something like that, and he'd got glassed in the neck. And I guess I'm just sort of thinking of how rare it is that white people tend not to stand up to other white people, because they don't want to be treated the same. And I was thinking that there's a gender parallel of lots of men don't stand up for women because they don't want all the men to turn on them and call them a simp or weak or things like this. Yeah,
yep.
Because they're actually scared of being treated the same way, and that is what happens. Is you know, if you're like N-word lover and all these things, or you get called you're a terrorist as well. Like whatever, if you're standing up for a group and you're in the more powerful group won't change. They will push you into the group that they don't like.
Yeah.
So I think that takes a lot of strength, and I think that just a lot of people, including my mum, just don't have that. And I have accepted that, and so that's part of the reason we're estranged. I don't I don't feel particularly angry with them anymore. I feel more like that just does happen. That a lot of people aren't strong enough to do it. And could I say that if I was born white, I would have the strength to do that? I don't know. I haven't experienced it. I hope so. But I guess if I think about any privileged group I'm in, I can think about how hard it is to break rank and be like, this is bullshit. We're all none of us are better than these people we're talking about, and you should shut up, whoever it is. That's people don't like that. Causes a stink. It causes arguments. It causes rifts, and you get labeled as the problem. And all those consequences. Those are what people avoid mostly, because people want to get along and they take the path of least resistance. I used to write to my dad and be like, I wish that you had tried and not just given up. And I wish that instead of like devolving into bitterness and, screw the world and everyone's against me, you'd been like, okay, but I do have this child and the child wants to hear from me and I do have things to share. And maybe I could just jump through these hoops. I could just jump through these hoops. They're stupid and I don't agree with them, but if I jump through the hoops, I can
build a relationship with my son.
I could know this child that I've created. But he didn't want to do that, and he didn't have the strength to do that. And so I guess in a way, it's like if they had been different people and they had been, my mum English, my dad Yoruba, that would have been fine if they both were like, I knew who she was and why she was with him, and he knew who she was, and it was a respectful, caring, loving relationship, and they had me. It wouldn't be the same. It's just badly thought through relationships and people living through traumatized reactions rather than they're not healed. Like they're not healed when they create. You don't have to pass an assessment of being mentally sound or emotionally stable to have
it's a shame because you should have to.
Yeah, you can just have one. And you can have one when you don't want to, or there's lots of ways that people are brought into existence. And I do think that I understand sometimes when people are like, well, you just shouldn't have mixed race people, but then that kind of feels like, okay, well, I still want to exist. Like I don't feel like I should have been aborted or something. I'm glad that I have life and exist and get to be here. So I don't. Sometimes I know where people are coming from when they say like, this is why they shouldn't have had that child. But I feel like my mum was always clear, even through everything. She did try and say it, like she said it a lot. I remember that I'm really glad I had you, and you are the best thing that I've done, and that was very clear of how she felt. It just was mixing with so many other things that weren't good for me.
So many, yeah.
At the distance, but that's why I don't have this like. It's not cut and dried for me. And I just feel that, it's not the idea of being in a white race or a black race is something that has been imposed by imperialism for a purpose of having a large group of people that it's okay to exploit and sin against in their own religion, because they're not really people. So you can profit off them in this relentless, brutal way in this system. And that's fine, because guess what? There's this whole racial hierarchy thing, and they're all not human, so that's fine. And we're actually in this infallible group of uniquely elevated, enlightened, and oh, by the way, really good-looking people. And we can do no wrong. So anything we do to them is not a sin. It's not bad.
Correct.
And they deserve it, which is the mentality of abuse anyway. Is anything I do to you, you cause me to do to you. And that is a system that was enforced on people who already existed, who then became mixed. And the reason they became mixed is so that they could be pushed into the group and could be contractually enslaved and exploited. That's why it was beneficial to categorize people this way. So we all existed before these categories and will exist after them. But the way they exist is very violent. And I just think that the problem is not that mixed people exist. The problem is that there's a category called mixed, meaning there's these categories that are by design hierarchical, and they are enforced
Correct.
hierarchical. Blackness is different because the identity has been formed in resistance to what Europeans said that it should be. Europeans said blackness is about being subservient, naturally subservient, subhuman, and not able to be as elevated as whites. Whiteness only exists in relation to that definition. It doesn't actually exist on its own. Obviously, like Irish people exist and Cypriot people exist, and people exist who are European. They have cultures, but whiteness as a group doesn't exist except in relation to there's these people called black people, and they're ours to exploit, and they are destined to be subordinate to us. That's the whole ideology of it. But black people the people who were put in the category of black, who were Wolof and Yoruba and Igbo and Akan and all these people, they were like, no, we are black, but that's not what that means. It means this, and we have these rich cultures that you have, like Caribbean cultures now, and you have Black American culture, Black Brazilian culture. These people, that they've made their own culture in blackness that defies that, which is why it annoys white people, white power so much, and they're always trying to suppress it, demonize it, criminalize it, say that it's low, but at the same time emulating it because they can see that it's rich and vibrant and alive. And
sounds like jealousy, right?
Yeah, it's jealousy because it undermines, because in their original ideology, how a white person could never be jealous of a black person because they are inherently superior, so they would have nothing to be jealous of. But that's obvious, that's a lie. So they have this, like Joy DeGruy says, this constant state of cognitive dissonance. When I used to have an afro, for example, people thought it was ugly at the same time as being unable to deny that it's very beautiful.
Yeah,
it's beautiful to have a halo of hair that goes up. You can't
defies gravity.
Yeah, people think it's beautiful at the same time as their conditioning is like, that's not beautiful. Ugh. And so they fight. Yeah. You can watch sometimes people fight internally with. They kind of do this smile with a frown, like
a grimace.
Yeah, they don't know what to do with it because the conditioning of the socialization of being white is, I am superior and everything I do is better, more beautiful, more elevated. And these people have no history and blah, 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 and they have nothing I could want. But when I see them, I just can't deny the reality that that's just not true, and they're different, and they're beautiful, or I like that person, or oh, that's so cool that they, obviously everyone knows that European people love the music that black people have created. The world does. So it's this kind of undeniable humanity that fights with the conditioning to dehumanize certain people. And I think my experience of being mixed is being caught in the cognitive dissonance of that.
Yeah.
And people's cognitive dissonance and projections about all of those things, and there's so much pain in it for black people, and there's so much life and death consequence behind these categories that at the same time as saying, oh, race is a construct, and it's like, it's a construct, but you could have a shorter life based on skin tone in this system. So it matters.
Definitely does. You said your mum, met somebody, your stepdad. What was that like in your later teen years before you decided, like I said, okay, I'm going to London. I need to be around people like me.
Yeah, I think, well, actually he's from Birmingham. So that's not
and cuts.
And well, he'd actually grown up in a multiracial environment with a lot of Asian people, like South Asian people.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd grown up in a white suburb, Erdington, in the 70s.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get the picture now. Erdington's well known.
Oh, it is?
Historically.
As a racist place?
Or a race, for being very racist. There were no-go areas, and Erdington used to be one of them.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, he would do both. So from our perspective, my mum's and mine, he was from this city. So he's always from a city, and he could like cook a curry, and he kind of had all these different stories, places he'd been, and people he'd known. And so he seemed worldly, but then in retrospect, well, actually at the time, it's a confusing because this is from my 14 to 18.
Yeah.
So I guess I went from wariness, and there's also a lot of overlap between domestic abuse experiences and racial ones here. So
are you okay to talk about this? Because we haven't got to if you don't want to.
It's not that I can't talk about it. I more just want to acknowledge that the ways he's behaving are to do with that, and the ways it's being received are to do with that in my family. It's also to do with addiction in my family. So my English family have generational issues with addiction, alcoholism. That's how my step granddad died. And yeah, it's just
same with my dad.
Yeah,
that's what got him in the end.
Yeah, which is sad because my great uncle is still living a long life, still being horrible. But my step granddad was a warm and nice man, and just a lot of pain. But then he was abusive as well. Okay. The confusing thing about these situations where there's abuse and there's a racialized dynamic to it, as well as gendered dynamic, obviously, is that it's not all bad. There's lots of good things mixed in, and it's really disorienting and confusing. And it's why people just stay in these dynamics, I think, for a long time, is that if it was all bad, you'd leave instantly, or you get help, you call authorities. Not that they always help, but when it's this kind of mix, that it's this sort of normalized thing that's quite normal in your family, and you don't notice it straight away, or you're younger, so you don't necessarily know the red flags. An immediate red flag would be that he very early on, an red flag would be that my mum introduced him maybe a bit soon. A red flag would be that he was in recovery from H addiction. I don't know if you can say.
Okay.
An addiction.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, drug abuse.
It's not always a red flag, but there's a lot that goes with that.
Probably not a green flag either, but yeah.
It's not a green flag. Yeah, it's a watch out. Like, let's check this out. Maybe let's spend longer getting to know each other. Which I'm not sure that my mum did, because there was a social introduction which probably made him seem a lot more approachable, like safe, sooner than if they'd been strangers. For a social introduction that also wasn't coming from a reliable source, where there was also, so these things are always like interlinked and and socially verified by people who are also in similar situations. So an immediate like blow up and alienation of one of her old friends, quite soon. When they were meeting, he ended up yelling at her, and they had this big argument, and then they never saw each other again, but they just carried on seeing each other. So I feel like in retrospect, there was lots of testing. What could I do? Oh, okay, I can yell at your friend and you're not going to talk to her again. Okay, next thing. I'm going to make a comment. I'm going to do this. And so early on, my response to this is being a young person who's used to, my mum would often yell at me, and there was emotional abuse and emotional neglect that was going on there. Okay, well, when someone's mean, you plug the gap and you become nicer, or you placate them, you make them like you. That's the safest thing to do. You don't argue with someone that you're smaller than and can't leave, or can't escape from. So do that. I remember saying, I remember being out to dinner once and being like, you could be my stepdad if you want. And then it was communicated back to me via my mum that he did not want to do that. And I was like, oh, it really hurt. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess that means they're not going to keep seeing each other. But they did. So just things like that. So it would just escalate the night. He would make comments about specifically Black women sometimes. He had an old school friend who was married to a Black woman who was very confident. They lived in London. This was like later on in my teens. They sometimes visit. So they had a mixed race kid, but he was having a completely different experience, and it was a baby in London. They lived in West London. very much oriented around her family, and so
Okay.
yeah, she was offering guidance to my mum, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it, there's so many layers to this. I don't know where to explain it, but my mum would have like very strong friends who were like
Yep.
very confident, and she would be their sidekick. And this was how she was introduced to this guy. She then got guidance through this guy's friend from another strong personality woman who she became the sidekick to, which I was like, I would kind of wish, like, I remember wishing, like, and feeling this loss of respect for my mum in a way that I was just like, why can't you take ownership of your own life and your own well-being of your own child? Why are you like casting out constantly for external validation, and from having a man, from asking people's advice that is kind of harsh, or like, just, we could just be a family if you just like stop trying to do this respectable thing. But she just thought that was the best and wasn't going to listen to me because I was the kid. So but yeah, he was I think like lots of white men who date single mums and single mums of black kids, he unfortunately probably thought she had low self-esteem, and she did. And so, she had fewer dating options, he maybe felt, especially in our small town, this very white conservative town. I don't think it's ever been anything other than conservative. Like, it's and just felt there was more leeway there, instinctively knew there was more leeway there, probably leaned on it a bit if he felt like she was self-conscious about it and wanted to be respectable and wanted his validation and love, and could keep that going, and then kind of do things to divide us. I think he would plant ideas like that I wanted her money, or that I was ungrateful and things like this, and she would kind of go with it. So that really didn't help our relationship. That was part of that was a lot of this. As I got older into my teens and then my early 20s, that was really, I was at university, but it was really like my mental health started to deteriorate a lot, and that led to the cutting off, and then some reconnections, but ultimately what it is now, which is very strange. But yeah, people it's sad to see, but yeah, having learned so much about intimate partner abuse and racism now, I can see how those things work together, and that there's so many dimensions to it, that again, it's not just this abuser comes in and they're all horrible. Like, he had lots of lovely qualities. He was really funny. He validated me in lots of ways, and would sometimes stand up for me to my mum and be like, "Oh, that's not very nice to say." Or so there was always this mix that it's so conflicting. But then he would store up things that he knew were your weak points, and then if you annoyed him or did something he didn't like, complained about the TV being on too much, or said that he was, he would have these big sort of, if he would have a bad day or something small went wrong, it would like build and build, and then it would become, you knew it was like, it was going to zero in on a problem. Now the problem is with you. Now if you say you're just making it a problem because you've got like a stain on your favorite jumper, like, we don't need to do it, that then you would hear something really personal that was about something you really cared about and felt vulnerable about, and he would like get you. So
very manipulative then.
Wasn't working. Yeah, very. But then I also felt sorry for him, which is another tactic that people who are abusive.
Oh yeah. They can play the victim very well. Yeah.
He had a horrible life, a horrible upbringing, and he was on the receiving end of horrible physical violence and all sorts of things. So that's sad. That's sad in itself. But lots of people who grow up with that also don't go on to leverage that against other people to make their lives worse. So so that is, I feel like without his presence, there may have been some more scope for me to have connection with my mum and repair the emotional voice when I was younger, because there was lots of raging and some smacking and things like that. She could be quite like horrible as well. But there was room for repair about that and understanding, I actually get on with my mum. We share, like, we both like, my mum's a painter and we both like the arts, and she really encourages my creativity and is really proud of that. And she always tried to make room for that. So there would have been room to do that, but I feel like with bringing him into the picture really kind of has
Close the door.
for me, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, that's sort of, that's how that goes. And yeah, since learning more about it, I do know that that's sometimes when I hear about cases of children being hurt or sometimes like lethally harmed by their families, and then they find out it's the dad, you actually find out it's the stepdad.
Yes, it is.
And especially when you see, oh, that isn't that kid like mixed, but what were the parents? And they see white dad.
Correct.
They wanted
Yes.
the woman, and they thought she was quite a good target for them, but they did not want there to be the child ultimately there. They either have children together and then they favor those children, or they just, yeah, they can really hurt. And sometimes
Yeah, we do see those statistics. But you decided to leave. You packed up your bags.
well, I
Had
went
your
to
little
university.
rucksack. Sorry?
That was my prescribed escape route, was at university. I was always told,
Okay.
get to a Russell Group university. You are going to a Russell Group university.
And that was it. That was the drive.
After the first year, I was like, I don't like it. And she was like, my mum was like, you stay in that university. You stay there. So I think that was probably a good call in some ways, and some ways not. But
so your experiences then going from like a small town to like London, very, very multicultural. You're feeling like, you've grown up knowing that you're black. Now you're going into a situation. You said you met quite a few mixed race people that had, white mom, black dad, but their circumstances, their upbringing was completely different to yours, providing yet again another hurdle of understanding for you to try and clamber over, because realizing that, yeah, everyone's different. And talk to us about that experience.
yeah, again, I liken it to coming out of a cult, and you're trying to like find out what's it all about, like what is the world about, because I've been in this weird bubble of these really specific set of rules and social things that I keep to, and ways that I navigate punishment and reward, and then you like leave it and it's like, oh, these people feel really differently about themselves and other people, and they're like telling me like, you're like this and that's why that, and I'm like, really? So I had like I had a friend who was black, and she was really like, she was from a very white place up north, but from a small black community within that had been like just like grinding out in this like very white racist area, but they had their like community people. So she'd had obviously like surrounded by people that looked like her and had that understanding. And yeah, she was the one who was like, she was kind of just like, but you're black, but you're not like black. Like, I'm black, you're mixed, so it's different. And that was the first time someone had told me that, like, plainly. And I had like quite a defensive reaction at first. I was like, I know from the way I was, if I know one thing from my entire upbringing, it's that I am black. Because boy, do I know that I'm black. But then I had to understand, oh, it's different. And that perhaps if I had been, not perhaps, if I'd been monoracially black, my treatment would have been more harsh, and the othering and dehumanization would have been a lot more harsh growing up than it was, because I was biracial and I had features that the people around me, the white people around me, were like, I like this, I like that about you, because it reminds me
palatable.
Yeah, you remind me of me. So just narcissism of, you look like me, and therefore I like you more. So yeah, I had to learn that, and that, okay, I met other mixed race people, and I was like, okay, here we go, now we're gonna relate. And it's like, no, they have different feelings about feeling excluded by black people they've grown up around, and then they have language to talk about it where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. Because sometimes people would be like, oh, it's racism on both sides, and I'd be like, oh, well, it's not that. Or they'd be like, oh, you have a white side, and it'd be like, I don't think from my experience, I don't think mixed race people have the experience of being racialized as black is uh, categorically prevents you from being in your white side. That's the whole point of it. Like, as we're going back to the history of it, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
You cannot be in the white category. You are now excluded.
Yes.
But then there's lots of painful things that I've learned since about colorism within multiracial families, where kind of like what I was saying about white families, where the mixed race kid gets neglected or sidelined. I've learned that can happen in multiracial families, where the dark-skinned people will get sidelined and neglected, and it's all part of the same hierarchy that has these horrible material consequences of, well, you could get a better job, or you will have a safer, longer life, is the idea, and that's what's enforced, and it's so unjust and painful and an ugly reality that it's just, no one likes to think about this reality, and it tears people apart that would otherwise be close.
So when you're going from being, like you said, I know what it's like to be black, honey. I've come out of
No,
white village.
it wasn't like
You know what I mean?
I was more
But
just a bit
it's like, hold on a minute. I know what it's like to be black.
I
I've
was
been,
like, what?
yeah, it's like, hold up, but I am black. And then you go around other black people and like, sorry, no, you're not. We're black. You're mixed race. So then you're like, oh, well, where do I sit then? And then it's there, but then you understand the experiences like colorism. Colorism is real. I've had it as well, which is, to be fair, it hasn't done me any favors. But people have said, oh, you're lighter skinned. You'll be able to do this. You'll be able to get that job. But because of maybe people would say my attitude, I am very much, like I said, there is no white influence with me. So I am mixed race, but my core is black, if that makes sense. Where you're mixed race, but your core would be from a white perspective, because that's all you've had through your life, where I didn't have that.
Which
So,
again,
but we meet in the middle, Teo, because if somebody looks at me and said, well, you're not black, I'd feel hurt too. So that's where the commonalities meet. Because it does hurt, because I see myself as black, but no, I'm not. I'm mixed race.
I think it depends on the context a lot of the time, because it's not this, because there's no, it depends on the context as to what the consequences are going to be, right? So if I'm at a gathering where it's mainly black people, no, I'm not the same, and that would be, I don't feel the same, and people recognize that, and we know that.
Wow.
But
see, I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, yeah, but that's the.
That's what I mean.
That's the difference, yeah. So, but I would say, what ended up happening, which is what I've had to unpack in therapy, is I moved to London, but like you're saying, I have like this mindset that is conditioned in a white environment. So people in white environments, they don't talk about race. So I learned how to deflect and neutralize, and if necessary, like I said, skewer someone if they said something really disrespectful. Well, then I would have something to say that got them in a way a white person, especially a white middle class person, wouldn't like. Something that made them feel like they weren't well read, or that they didn't, that they had done something that was socially a bit crass. They wouldn't like that. That would
interesting. So the classism point of view, then.
Yeah,
interesting.
But what it is. That's what I did to adapt. That could serve me well in a workplace, for example, but it still feels just as terrible. So I would work somewhere with people. So what I ended up happening was the same kind of white people would gravitate towards me as I grew up with. So I would end up in these housing situations or friendships or workplaces where I was like, well, I got this job because they liked me. They liked that it would be a bit of diversity, but what they liked about me was that I was mirroring something back to them that they found familiar. So I have been given this opportunity. Like you said, you get the opportunity. That does not mean that that white people do not have dehumanizing ideas about you. It means that they find you the least bad. That's not good. And it doesn't feel good. And it doesn't actually, the reward is empty and it's totally conditional. So yeah, I guess that is, I remember seeing a clip of it's an American, I can't remember her name, sorry, but like this biracial woman in an American context saying the black person interviewing her saying, you have these privileges, and she's I guess more similar to you, growing up in a black environment. She's like, I would trade those privileges. I don't want them. I would trade them to feel more belonging with the people that I grew up with and the people that I am with in my heart. I do not want these privileges. I don't want them. I would rather not have them. It's not a choice. Like I say, it's the painful thing that pulls people apart. Is it does have material advantage, opportunities that lead to like I said, a safer, longer life. Like that's just not fair, and that is offered. It's not a nice offering in the end because it's empty, like I said, and even those things of like being more desirable are also empty, even when they come from black people that covet or like fetishize. Oh, you've got this, you have these European features, and I want to be like close to them, or I think that they're something that I want. It's like, but what, you don't. They're not. That's, I don't like that either. I don't want you to like me because I look more white, or I have closeness.
That's it, Teo. I didn't even know that existed. Could you elaborate some more on that? So you have the experience where black people would fetishize like your mixed race features then?
Sometimes. It's not, it would be like, actually there's someone at the moment, because I'm training as a bar, actually. I don't want to specify, I don't want to call anyone out. No. I'm more saying that sometimes maybe the black people I've met would be like, they would say like, I really like your hair, and it would make me feel sad. They'd be like, you have really nice hair. Okay. It's so strange because it's like I grew up wishing that my hair would fall like downwards, like everyone around me's hair, because that would be the better thing. And then I sort of come into in a different context. I've got someone who I would love to feel close to telling me, oh, you have really good hair, which is a way of saying that it's not always. Sometimes someone can just be saying you have nice hair, I like hair. But where it feels like there's a sense that they wish that their hair wasn't like it is, and that they think there's something that's not nice about it. Or they think, oh, you're a good color, or something like this. Like, it's just, it feels so sad to hear.
It is.
And so I hear from like particularly women who are either mixed race or they're black, but they just happen to have lighter skin, that sometimes men can literally just talk about them by their skin, of like being that light skin, or
so
I like that about you. And I don't ever hear those women being like, oh, that's great. And maybe if women do that, that's maybe some other women are like, well, I think that's really sad that you think that that's something that to base your self-esteem on, is like, well, I'm like desired for this specific reason, that I'm closer to whiteness. Like,
it's really weird, Teo, because I've had the experience where, say, for example, it's been like a white person, a colleague, somebody that I've been around, and they'll say, oh, you're so exotic. I get described as exotic. Anything. And it's like, that makes me feel sick.
Yeah.
But I can't remember like a black guy like fetishizing my lighter skin. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, because my ignorance, my cognitive dissonance might have distorted it and translated it as something else.
It's not my experience, like I say. This is more like, these are more like dynamics I've learned about, and then where do I fit in that as someone who's...
Where do we fit in, Teo? We don't do it.
I don't know. I think as I'm getting older, I'm feeling like, well, maybe there's no answer. It's a riddle with no answer. And I guess, like Toni Morrison says, isn't it? The biggest purpose and function of racism is a distraction. It keeps you divided and distracted so that you can't get on with your own life and relationships. And yeah, I guess there is no answer. It depends who you ask. It depends what context I'm in. Like, if I go to South Africa, bam, I have to accept what it is there. Like, I can't be arguing with people like, well, I'm black in South Africa. They'll be like, but
they're like, you're coloured there.
That's what
they've got their own category. Any mixed race person's coloured.
Category.
Yeah.
And if I go to the US, black, that's what the category will be, because that's how they've set things up. And in Brazil, they have their own ways of doing things. People will be like, it's all mixed there, and it's a melting pot. It's like, it's very much stratified. And that if you'll find it stratified by skin tone, and you'll find the people with the most power will be white Brazilian, and the people with the least will live in favelas, and they will have dark skin. That is just, it's kind of permeate, like, and they probably have their own words and ways of organizing that I don't know about, but I don't know what I'd be. I think I'd probably just be, well, no idea, but depends on where I go, like I say. And if I go to a European country where they didn't have a colonial history relating to Africa, when I've talked to like Slavic white people and stuff,
yeah,
they're very dismissive of the idea of racism, because white Slavic people have had very hard lives in recent history. So they don't like this idea. But nevertheless, they still have it, because the idea of racism is global and it's everywhere. It's part of the economic system. So they have it, but they resent it, and they don't have the same kind of prestige about the idea that they're white as.
Interesting. So what do they see you as then?
Who?
You, what do they see us as, the Slavics?
Oh, black.
And that's it.
Probably mixed.
No in between.
Probably mixed, but they probably wouldn't. What I mean is they wouldn't have the same lineage of those, what those divisions mean, if they're from Russia, Lithuania. Like these places weren't having. They weren't having colonies in Africa where they were using a plantation system to generate massive profits for themselves and then build their infrastructure from there. Like that's not how those places developed. So they don't. It's not so entrenched inherently in their socialization over centuries that I am white. Like they don't have that. They would have
interesting.
So they, I guess, like some people would say, would describe talking to Irish people. I don't know if I necessarily have always this experience, but some people might say Irish people, they're like white but without the entitlement, because they have this anti-colonial, like harsh recent history that they feel strongly about.
I've met both sides of Irish.
I would not. That's why I say I would not say this about Irish people, because I went to Catholic schools, and that's just not my experience of Irish people, or at least the Irish people
that you've met. Yeah, I've seen both sides.
And like I shared on my TikTok, Ireland has a terribly violent history with mixed race children who were born to white Irish mothers and put them in industrial schools, and they had horrible time, and they still to this day won't tell them who their parents are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a very thin. That's why I say they might have this initial. Oh, they don't have this kind of weird attitude towards me. It feels more open. It feels more immediate. But they have their own beliefs still, because, like I said, the idea of a racial hierarchy is a global one. And
in England, they were coupled with black, so they more or less would have felt not on the same level. But you look at the English shops years ago, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. So they would have felt association. However, when you're back at home, that association is disassociated, and you can be who you want to be because you're at home.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a, because I have Irish genetics as well. I don't know if you do, but like my great granddad.
I think it's Scottish with me. Right. And funnily enough, my maiden surname means stick to your own kind. Imagine that. Keep your names kind. That's what it means. Yeah, it's Scottish.
Is that like an old Scottish name, like a clan kind of thing, or what? But then that's super interesting as well, I guess. So yeah, there's loads of layers to it.
Loads of layers.
I was going to say that but then Ireland has, Irish people did partake in the white racist colonial project, because a lot of them emigrated to Ireland, to America, and obviously
Jamaica.
And Jamaica. And if you go to Boston, there you'll find a slight Irish accent in their accent, and real strong anti-black racism. They were slave owners. They did all of it, and they are known for being quite racist. Like that is, they really, I guess it's like they visited the abuse that they suffered, the colonial abuse. They went and, oh great, we get to do this to someone else now. Great. More so, like, and yeah, I guess the Scottish link is super interesting, because sometimes it's interesting how people in the Caribbean will, like, I did a genetic test, and I did find I had some African Caribbean like genetics as
really?
Well. So there's some story there, yeah, of Sierra Leone, Caribbean, because Sierra Leone was a big place where they trafficked people out of as same as Congo, or through.
Yeah.
So is West Africa. So that's somewhere in there is some link. But it's interesting the Scottish link between people in the Caribbean and Irish. But a lot
Our
of
surnames are commonly Scottish.
And how people like relate that, because I once dated someone who was, both parents were black, but she had people thought we were both biracial.
Okay.
And so we had this very people thought we looked quite alike sometimes, which was kind of weird. But like they would think that they would basically I don't know if I'm still on or if I should keep talking, but I guess I will. But they should think that they would think that she was mixed race as well, and they would ask her. They would insist on like asking her where she was from, and she would keep having to say that. I just kept talking.
No, that's fine. It just went off on my side, so apologies for that.
But basically, people thought she was mixed race as well, and they would press her. She would tell me that she would be at house parties and things. People would be like, "But where? But where are you from? But where are you coming from?" She'd be like, "They are from the Caribbean, Grenada, and I can't remember this, but like that's where I'm from." And they would just keep going, and she'd be like, "Because of European ancestry," and they'd be like, "Ah, I knew it. Like where from?" And she's like, "But how? But how?" And she would just be like, I don't want to talk about it." And then it'd be like, they wouldn't leave it, and she'd be like, "Because of rape during slavery." And then
let's start there.
They would just be like, "Oh,
let's start there."
That's the answer. Are you happy now? That's the answer. What do you think? She's obviously talking about white people doing this, but yeah, that's such a complex like inheritance to like digest and like what makes sense of yeah.
I think
it's not my experience, but I'm interested in it.
Yeah, it's like with the African, say for example, the Caribbeans, they've been through it like twofold. They're obviously kidnapped and shipped out of Africa, sent over to be slaves in the Caribbean, or apparently the more obedient ones went to America. The rebellious ones ended up in Jamaica, allegedly. So history tells us, and then we end up coming back over here. So you will find that sometimes Caribbean people will have different opinions to African people because, say, for example, even though Africans have suffered colonialism, when they've come over into the UK, they've not come via the slavery route. They've come through because, say, for example, they wanted to go to university, notwithstanding that they would have experienced their own racism. But I'm saying that with the Caribbeans, there's so much trauma that is inside us, over hundreds of years that obviously play out in mental health, etc., etc. All of these things that they're now saying, did you know that your parents' trauma and your grandparent is all embedded in your DNA? I think Tony Robinson spoke about it before it was evidentially proven. I think she spoke about it in 1988, but now we're starting to accept it. So if you think you're holding those traumas, as your mum's trauma went into you, your trauma is going to go into your children. So it's like, where does this stop? How do we address this? How do we change it? You've done the right thing, Teo. You broke away from what wasn't any benefit to you. You learned more about yourself through therapy, through experiences, and now you're here to talk about it. There's going to be plenty of mixed race kids, adults, grandparents listening to this and think, I can relate to Teo's story, but they never got to tell their story. They suppressed it. They kept it quiet. They didn't want to speak about it. Maybe they married a white person and now all their grandkids are white. So it's all erased. It's gone. We haven't got to think about it. And grandma's just an ancient history relic that's in the cupboard. Did you know that your grandma was black? But we don't talk about it at Christmas. And it's kind of that, or they marry into black and like what I've done, and the bloodline carries on differently through there. It's complex, but it needs to be spoken about. We're not talking about it in like a victim mentality way. It's sharing experiences. And so often you're told to shut up. Oh, look at you, you're just playing the victim.
Right.
why we're not allowed to speak, and that's why racism still continues, because every time you try and speak about it, it's suppressed. You're told to shut up, get over it. That was years ago. Meanwhile, there's qualified doctors with racist views operating on black kids in hospitals, and you're wondering why the death rates are slightly abnormal going into labor as a woman. Oh yeah, she can deal with it, she's all right. How many parents, mothers have died at the hands of, she can cope with that pain, I'm not listening to her, I'm not taking her seriously? It still lives.
Particularly in America, where it's like, that's like the basis of their medical system as well. Like
All medical systems,
yeah,
they experimented on us during slavery to get a lot of their statistics and their figures.
Adriana Rich, yeah. So yeah, I love it. That's really important. Like everything you said, I feel like, especially the noting the differences between African colonized still, but African immigrants to the UK and America as well. I know there's like diaspora conversations about that, but I think there's like a real. I think it's a shame that the people end up getting pitted against each other rather than having a conversation. Because yes, like the I guess it all relates to, like, to me, it all relates to systems of abuse and how they all use the same playbook, which is to divide and pit people against each other, which is why, if you divide people, if you've got a load of laborers that you're trying to exploit, and you divide some of them into, well, you're going to be indentured servants, so you're going to get treated a bit better. And did you know that that's because you're white? They actually had to tell people. Jacqueline Battalora writes about this in Birth of a White Nation, that in 1681 is like the first rule, like written law about whiteness. But they had to tell people, they had to tell the Dutch and English and indentured servants, like, you're white. And they were like, okay. And that you're going to be treated better. Your terms of labor are going to be different. And then you're all black, and you're going to have unspeakably harsh punishment. You're going to be worked a lot harder. You're going to have shorter life expectancy. You're going to have harsher punishments. And any child that you create is also contracted into the same circumstance. That's your lot. And there you're divided. And then you tell this group, oh, you're much better than this group. And you tell this group, they're your enemy. And then they don't all get together and say, actually, why are we all working for you? Kill that person and then live in a different way. It's a way of having power over a group of people, right? So that's how it ends up working when it's the diaspora. Is you don't want all black people banding together. You don't want the African people being like, oh, welcome home, and here's all the things that, here's history, and here's like a cultural continuity. We see you, like, this is a pain for us as well, of what happened, and families were torn apart, and they don't want the people who were already there to be like, oh, welcome Africans, like, here's how it works here.
Yep.
Let's all get together and share, like, and they don't want that, because that's strong. So they want people divided and arguing with each other. It works.
Correct.
With the white power system have that. And also people buy into it. So you do get people being like, oh, well, they're, I guess, like Jeannie Achere, English Nigerian comedian, now lives in the US, shared her experiences. I remember she was like, she would get bullied at school for being African by the Caribbean kids, and she would face racism at work. So they had, because they had been indoctrinated with the idea that you're not African, because part of that was for them, from their memory of who they were.
Spot on.
And that process of going to be enslaved as chattel was deliberate. It was to break people down and destroy their humanity, which is what people do when they traffic people. You get a new name, you have different rules. If you don't obey the rules, you will be tortured or mutilated or killed. That's that. You don't own anything about yourself. You don't own your children. I own them.
Imagine.
And and I can do anything. I can do anything, and it's fine. That is total power, and like the depravity of that is unprecedented in human history. To encode that as like there are a type of non-human that this is okay to do. That's never been. There have been a class of slave, but that's not what this was. This was trying to eradicate people's memory of themselves, of their whole humanity. It was a process, like a systematic process of doing that. You mustn't speak your language, or your tongue will be cut out. You're going to be mixed in with people who don't speak your language.
Yep.
In the States, you cannot have drums, because if you drum, you'll communicate. And burn down.
Yeah, Junk
You're
Crow laws.
rebellion. You rebel.
Yeah,
We don't want that. So we want you all.
you're not allowed to read while history's being rewritten, so you can't appeal it. Yeah,
You have to believe these things about yourself. You have no history. You are naturally uncivilized. You aren't capable of learning. That's why you can't learn. You are violent. That's why we're being violent with you, because you have all these things.
imagine all of that.
Relentlessly over centuries, and you have to adapt to that, because to mentally survive that, you have to make that
Correct.
And then have like all people who are victims of abuse, you have to manage the abuser and then work out how you can have the least amount of harm and protect your children. So Joy DeGruy talks about this in the plantation system, that if an overseer was to compliment your child, that would be bad. That would mean that they are looking at them,
them
for something, and they might sell them away from you, and you won't be able to protect them as much as you can. So what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is to take, they're not up to much, like, don't look at
that, put them down.
They're rubbish, and tell the kid, like, you're rubbish, like, don't
overperform.
Don't overperform. Draw attention to yourself. Don't argue. Don't help that other person who's being hurt or killed. Like, just mind your business. Like, stay
Imagine
for safety. And then that's what Georgia was talking about specifically with Black Americans, is like that. Then you might have a school situation where a mum is going, "Oh, your son's doing really well," and she might say, "Oh, he's not. He's not." The inside,
you talk yourself down. Do you do that?
Because
I do it. That's something that I've learned. That's learned behavior.
I definitely learned that me being top of the class in English was not. Sometimes it was a good thing, depending on my teacher. So I had a teacher who encouraged that and thought it was really great, and she would kind of, I guess, praise me in front of others, and just was like happy to have a student who was doing really well and was listening to what she was saying, to be honest. But like another teacher who I had, I think the year before, had like given feedback at parents' evening that I was maybe a little full of myself.
Oh wow.
And my mum didn't really, I don't know if she clocked it or she just didn't want me. She just kind of wanted to, she said, "I don't think that's true. I don't know where that's coming from," but she didn't like that because I was so high performing in most other areas.
You're not allowed to be confident. You do know that, don't you?
She didn't like that I was confident. She didn't like that I was giggling with a friend that I had and being a bit silly and still doing really well. And that I realized that she pronounced one of the words wrong.
How dare you?
Because I'd known about Greek myths, and she thought Persephone was pronounced Persephone, and I thought that was funny, so she didn't like that.
Oh my god!
So, I think that was what it was that she just, and she didn't like that it was a black kid who was doing well. That's not because she's a horrible person, but because she wanted to teach, but it conflicted with her idea that that shouldn't be, and so that annoyed her. I guess that's what Akala talks about, being smart at school. That they wanted you to do well, but they did not like it, so it wasn't actually smart, and it would result in some kind of subtle punishment. But in the system we're talking about, like, it's like an echo of it.
I think that's where that's where the saying comes from. Everyone wants you to do well, but never better than them.
Yeah,
I think
that's true, and that's true across humans. Like, humans are just
competitive beings.
Humans have some horrible traits and some wonderful traits, and they come out in all sorts of different contexts, and race is definitely one of them.
One of the things that I'd like to ask you, Tao, before we close off, because I'm going to go through some statistics, but your experience is your experience, but what advice would you give to any parent that is considering, obviously, getting into a relationship that will invite a mixed race child? What advice would you give them to being a better parent? I want people to learn something, and I understand you can only speak from your experiences, Tao, because everyone's experience is different. But what advice would you pass on from your experience? And you can't say don't do it, because we've got to be really positive.
Oh, I wouldn't say don't do it, no, because like I said, I wouldn't wish I didn't exist.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like
that's just my sarcasm. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I guess what I was thinking before was that one of the worst, like you were saying about, like, don't talk about it, shut up. This is, I think that for me personally, language and talking and words are a way of connecting, and it's why I've been making this account where I speak and use words to describe my experiences, because part of what trauma is that it doesn't have a language and it can't be processed, so it never finishes. It just keeps happening and it never gets resolved, and it's as whatever it is, it's as horrifying or upsetting or distressing as the moment it happened 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, and new situations created where it just keeps circling until it's able to be contained and processed. It just repeats.
Yeah.
And so I would say that it's not possible to shelter a Black child from experiencing racism, and certainly not by proximity to whiteness. If anything, that would increase it. And it's not denial is not protection, and denial is not safety. Denial is part of racist trauma, and it's why if people are talking about something racist that happened, you'll have lots of racist people in the comments saying, no, it didn't. That's not real. You're being a victim. You're playing the victim. It's why it sounds so similar to any victim of abuse. Whenever a victim of something traumatic speaks up, rather than look at, well, what caused that and why did they do that? Let's look at the active agent in what is causing the distress, and not condemn and pathologize the person who's experiencing completely reasonable distress. It's completely reasonable to feel distressed by racism. It's distressing. It's horrible and painful, and so there needs to be space to process how horrible and painful it is, so that it needs to be spoken, and it will have a social penalty for the white parent, which is that white people will not include you, and they will call you names, and you will lose status, and that is part of loving the Black people that are in your life, because you have to stand with them. So if you're not standing with them, you're denial, you're playing it down, you're part of the trauma they're navigating and the experiences of racism they're navigating. You're not beside them with, like, you're not, do you know what I mean? Love is fierce, you know, it's not like this passive, like, oh yeah, I love you over there, but I want to stay over here. Like, and yeah,
It has to be unconditional.
A white person cannot experience it, but they can let go of the comfort blanket of denial that is happening, and not interpret things that are racist as, oh well, maybe they didn't mean it that way. That's gaslighting and denial, and it's an essential part of racism. So you will be partaking in an essential part of how racism works, which is playing it down and saying it didn't happen or it's not happening, and that what people see and experience, hear and feel, they're not really seeing, experiencing, hearing or feeling when they are. So I would just say, yeah, that do not fall into denial, because that is an important part of perpetrating racism. So if you love the people, don't do it.
Very, very well said. I went and had a little bit of research before we linked up, and this is how horrific. We don't tend to do censuses on mixed race stuff in the country. The last census was done 2021.
Yeah.
So I said, how many, the question that I asked was how many people in the UK identify as mixed race, Black and white, because that's what we've just kept it simple, because we know mixed race involves a lot of other races, but we've kept it what's personal to us in this, for this show. 2021 census breakdown, mixed Black and white populations. So white and Caribbean, 513,042. And like I said, this is in 2021. So the percentage in England and Wales, because that's where it's from, is 0.9%. Mixed white and Black African, 249,596. But they said a UK overall. So you've got your Scotland and Ireland there. Northern Ireland is 0.42%. So the combined total is 1.1% of the population that identify as mixed race. black and white, whether it's black, white African or black, white Caribbean. So research suggests, because then I thought, okay, fair enough. How many of these have a white mom and a black father? Just out of interest. Another thing, oh, sorry, we don't know the answer to this because it's not a question that they deem important as part of a census to find out about. But what it's done is it's found historical trends, and it says in Britain and the US too, most black and white children have been born to white mothers and black fathers. This was especially the case post World War II and Windrush eras, when Caribbean and African men migrated and formed families with white British women. Sociological studies, I think, from the Institute of Education and Manchester University has found that white mother, black father pairing to be the majority pattern in the UK. Some surveys suggest roughly 60 to 70% black, white mixed people in Britain have a white mother, black father. And the reverse, black mother, white father, is less common, but still significant and has become more visible in younger generations. So then I went to say, so how many of these are single parents? Once again, there's no real statistics. They haven't done the research on it. And I think this is something that should be done moving forward. Across all ethnicities, about 22 to 25% of families with dependent children are lone parent households, and this is as per 2021. Lone parenthood is more common amongst women. Around 90% of lone parents are the mothers. By ethnic groups, Black Caribbean households have the highest proportion of lone parents with dependent children, 63%, Black African households, 44%, compared to 22% of white households. Mixed ethnic households, the data is patchier, like I said, no research, but a survey in 2011, so this is ages ago, reported that lone parenthood in the 40 to 45% range, significantly higher than white British averages. So it estimates around 40 to 45% mixed black white children being raised by a single parent, and that single parent usually is a white mom. So it's interesting. Obviously, these are not accurate figures because there isn't any surveys being done to collect that information, whether they don't see it as important or relevant or whatever, but it's not a survey that's been recently done. So it's interesting that obviously the mixed race numbers are increasing, but there's still no real research on it, and hence the reason why a lot of things are just swept under the carpet. Maybe they didn't mean it like that. I think you're overreacting. Don't worry about it, etc., because there's no real interest in educating people on it. And I really do think if you're going to get into a mixed race relationship, you should really try and understand the culture well. Both of you together, a joint working, you should understand each other's culture, and and try and work together, even if you aren't together, because the consequence is a child that grows up confused, that grows up with this identity crisis, that will mimic either one side or the other, depending on whether the parents were together or not. And they go on this journey of finding out who they are. They're either happy in their journey, like, yeah, I identify more with the white side, I'm cool with that. Or like me, I'm happy identifying with the black side, I'm cool with that. But then there's people like yourselves that have grown up isolated, where you didn't have a choice, and you've always throughout your life have to second guess and question absolutely everything. I didn't have that until I entered the workplace. That's when I really knew that I stood out, because I've had racial experiences in workplaces, not in and around my community or my family.
Yeah, I don't know if I felt like I had an identity crisis so much as I felt like my presence created crises in other people constantly, and
Yeah.
I was never sure what to do with it because it made them act in a strange way towards me. And yeah, but that is kind of the same thing because we get our identity through other people. So, but that's interesting statistics, and that people don't really. But I guess it's not considered like you said, worth. That it's not considered a
It's a shame because it's interesting. It's an interesting topic.
I feel like anecdotally it is mostly I mean, there are a lot of single white mothers of mixed race children, just even from people who reply to the
Oh,
video.
is there? You've had that
Yeah,
feedback.
a lot of people will reply and be like, "Oh, I'm watching this as a white mum of mixed race," because I guess they're wanting to learn. I
Understand.
mean, that's not really what I mean. I've made it to connect with other people who have like similar or different experiences, but like who have been raised in a totally white environment, and just to compare notes on like what was that like for you and what did you make of it. And um but yeah, it's definitely, I guess anecdotally it is the most common, and it's also the thing that is like the most um it feels like it's the thing that has the most charge around it. Like racists really hate the idea because the whole point of white racism is that there's this idea of like pure white womanhood, right? That can be corrupted or,
Desecrated.
yeah, exactly. Like how, which is like a very sort of small idea of what women are, and that they're just these kind of pure, they're supposed to be the mothers to the future white patriarchs, they're supposed to be, that's their role, and they're not doing it. In fact, they're like, and then obviously white men have incredible like the psychosexual projection onto black men is strong about like
Yeah.
ultimately just penis size and
Yep.
masculinity and
Yep.
physical strength and that kind of thing. It's really like
Weird.
charged, yeah, and you'll find it in lots of, to put it bluntly, like porn that people like to watch and things like that. That this is a real thing that even people who are very racist secretly are actually really interested in and spend like it's
Fetishized. It's a fetish, isn't it?
yeah, well, yes, there are elements of it in that, I would say, yeah. And the I guess because humans fetishize things, especially if they find them transgressive, or that is what a lot of people, a lot of people's, a lot of people's way they are or want to be, or their morals. The more strident they are about those morals, sometimes subconsciously, the more opposite they go.
Opposite. Yeah, you're right.
Often, lots of conservative Republican, or whoever it is, their private life will be very different than
Yes.
that.
The mask.
Of course, yeah.
The
And then
societal mask.
yeah, and people who can be like, I don't know, like really like progressive seeming might be actually have like hide some quite regressive views, or
I believe that.
views, but ways of behaving actually.
I believe
They
that.
want to be like this. They're actually we're all like a massive contradictions.
Yeah, I totally agree. Listen, Teo, I could literally, I think we've been going for nearly 2 hours, and I don't edit anything out. I want it to be as raw as it is. Please feel free to point others in the direction. I have inquired about getting some studio space, so I'll get you up to Birmingham. I'll make sure you're fed and watered, and I'll get you back to wherever you need to be. Hopefully with more guests, but I'd like to continue stuff like this eventually face to face. I think it would just be so great for us all to sit down in a comfortable space, in a common space, and just have these conversations about our experiences, because you've got so much to give and offer other people. So I'm going to ask now, Tail, would you be prepared to come back again? Should we, progress with this? Hopefully we do, but I'd really love to have you back again.
Oh yeah, I'd love to keep talking.
We need it.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me and asking really good questions, and also being a really good listener. I noticed that you remember so much of what I said, and then you like say it back, and I appreciate how you've like steered things, but then like left lots of space. Thank you.
Space is what we never had. Space is important, and as important, like I said, and I want you to leave this knowing that we all of us as humans, we are important. And if anybody feels like they've been shut down because of the way they look, because of the way they are, I don't want anyone to feel like that. And I want this to be a welcoming space for anyone to come in and share their opinions. We might not always agree, and that's fine. That's part of discussion. But I just want this to be a safe space for people like us. So roll on episode 2, and I can't wait for us to all be in a room together, eating nice food and talking about our experiences. So until the next time, Tao.
I was gonna say, when's this one coming out and when's the next one coming out?
Oh, to be fair, because it's bank holiday, I'll probably put it out today.
Nice.
I'll just literally drag and drop it, put it out, and then just see what it does in the ether. I've got to tell you now, Teo, I don't play the numbers game. I don't do the popularity tests. I don't do that. What I like is quality. I would like personally for your mum to see this and for her to think, damn, or another parent to see this and think, oh my gosh, have I been making my child feel like that and I didn't know? For a father that was selfish, that decided to just up and leave, for him to look and think, that could be my child. That's what I'm here for. So hopefully it will spread that way. And like I said, the more guests, the merrier.
Cool. Well, I hope people who've grown up in a similar way to me as well watch this, because yeah, it'd be nice to connect with them as well.
Oh, definitely. I'll clip it and I'll give you a clip if you want to put it up on your TikTok by all means, or just go through the whole thing yourself and choose the part that's most significant to you and you clip it as well. So whatever you want to do, the footage is going to be there on YouTube for you to download anyway.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
All right. Happy bank holiday.
Happy
Ladies
bank
and gentlemen, this is a different segment. It is under a different playlist. I know it's not boxing, so if you're not interested in subjects like this, you haven't got to watch it. I'll put it in a specific playlist. But for those of you that took the time out to listen to this, I appreciate you so much. Until the next time, as we say at October Red, stay ready. Adios, Teo.
Adios.
People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.
October Red is sponsored by SA Security. Maximum security, minimum fuss.